Welcome to Dress YouTube channel. Today we'll be learning how to make a bustier dress with yoke. Okay, so we'll be achieving this after the class. This is an example of a dress with yoke. So kindly subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and click on the notification bell so that you get notified anytime we upload a new video. Thank you. Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we'll be learning how to make a bustier dress with yoke. Okay, so this is my front basic body is ready. This is my armhole line, my bust point, under bust, and my waistline. Okay, and this here is my bust span, also known as the nipple to nipple. For this is 4.5 inches, and I made that into a straight line. Okay, so on my shoulder area, I'm going to measure what I have on my shoulder, 5 inches. So the 5 inches, I'm going to divide it by 2, and that's going to give me 2.5 inches. And I'm going to connect my 2.5 inches to my bust span measurement on my bust point like this. Okay, so once this is connected, I'm going to take my waist dart, and I'll be taking 1 inch on both sides, on both the waist and the under bust. So I'm taking 1 inch, and then I'm going to make that into a straight line. You can take up to 1.5, 1/4, or ½ inch on each side, depending on how busty the person you are working with is. And on the bust point, I'm going to go down by ½ or 1 inch. So I'm going down by ½ inch. The reason I'm going down by ½ inch is because I don't want to connect my under bust directly to the bust point, because I don't want any sharp edge around that area. So I'm using my curl driller. I'm connecting this to my under bust. Okay, so I have this now. So now I'm going to take my circumference measurement. Okay, so I've taken my bust measurement and also my waist measurement, and all this will be going off. So remember, I said it's a yoke, and the neckline is plunging, meaning it's very deep. Okay, so I'm going to be taking my yoke measurement now. So from my starting point, I'll measure, depending on how deep you want to be. For me, I'm measuring 11 inches downwards. You can see that is very deep. So I'm measuring 11 inches here, and then on my armhole line, I measure 5 inches from my starting point also. So this is 11 against 5 inches. So using my curved ruler, I'm going to make a smooth curve, joining my 11 inches to my 5 inches like this. I'm looking for where I can get a suitable curve. So once I have that, I'm going to connect it. So I have my cuff like this. So now to tighten up my bust so that it will not be too open, so that it will be firm to the bust on this upper area, I'm going to take half inch on both sides of the bust span line, or you can also call it the dart line. So I'm taking half inch, and like I did here, I'm not going to be connecting directly to my bust point. I'll go up by ½ inch, and then I'm going to connect my half inch like this. Okay, remember the upper part is a yoke, this side is a yoke. That's why the dart is not going to be getting to this side. So now that I've taken 1 inch here, I don't want it to be short on my chest line, so I'm going to extend my line up to here, and then I'm going to redraw my armhole line. So with this, I know the 1 inch that I took here, I've replaced it back here. Okay, so now we are almost done, but before we go, I want to tighten my under bust a bit. So I'll be taking my bust dart, and on the bust line, I'm taking 1 inch up and down, and then from the bust point also, I measure ½ inch away from the bust, and then I'm going to connect my bust dart to this. If you look at our measurement, you notice this is my front and this is the back. You notice that the back is short by 2 inches because of this bust dart that I intend to take. So by the time I cut it off and I close them together, they will be matching on their side seam. Okay, so now we are through with our front panel. Now we'll go over to the back. So for the back, I already drafted my back bodies and it's very simple. This is a zipper allowance, these are back darts, a back measurement with the zipper allowance. Also I took 1 inch zipper, sorry, seam allowance. I took 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now for the yoke of the back, I'm just going to go down by, let's say, 6, from 5 inches. Actually, it depends on how low you want it to be, but for me, I'm just going to go with 7.5, and then I'm going to make that into a straight line. So that is my yoke. Okay, but because I don't want my zipper to go through my, because I'm using organza fabric for the yoke, I don't want the zipper to go through the organza. So instead of that, I'm just going to break it here and then make a curve around here, so that I can add maybe a press button or a button here. My zipper is going to stop here. You can also connect it in a V shape like this if that is what you want, but I think I like this shape, so I'm going with this. And that is all you need. This is your yoke for your back bodies, and this is the yoke for the front bodies. So I'm going to cut this out now. So now we have our front and back bodies. I just cut that so that I'll have smaller paper to work with. Now I'm going to cut off my yoke first of all. So this is the yoke. I'm going to cut this off, and this is my bustier. So I'm going to remove this dart, and so this dart, and also this dart. So I've cut out the dart in. Now I'm going to cut my bust dart also. So once I cut my bust dart, I'm just going to close the dart up like this, and then I'll hold it with a masking tape. So that is how you draft your bustier with yoke. Okay, so our front is ready. So when I'm cutting this on my fabric, I remember that I'm going to put seam. I remember we are joining this back to the yoke, so we need seam allowance here, seam allowance up here, and also on the yoke we need seam allowance down here. Do not forget. And also the neckline depends on what you want. For me, I'm not going to be using this basic neckline, so I'll change this to a boat neckline. And for my neck width, I'll be working with 5 inches. And for the neck depth, I can make it 3 inches or 3.5. So I'm going to connect that now, and then I'll cut it out. So that is what I'll be using for my neckline. So I have to do this to the back also. So on my back neckline, I'll be going for a 5-inch width neckline also, and then I think I'm okay with the depth I have already for the back. So I just connect this and then cut off like I did for the front. So it is very, very simple to make. Okay, so I'm going to cut off the yoke of the back and also the dart. Okay, so I've cut off the yoke and also the dart of my back, but remember that I said the zipper is not going to run through the yoke. So the small design that I make here, this curved shape, is what my yoke is going to be following. So I'm going to discard this zipper allowance because I don't need it. So this is what I'll be having by the time I sew my yoke together with my lower part. Okay, and likewise for this also, because we'll be sewing them together, I need allowance here, seam allowance. I need seam allowance here to join, and also seam allowance here to join. It's very, very important. Do not forget that. And when I'm cutting on my fabric, because this is a very deep neckline, on my bustier area here is not going to match by the time I'm sewing it like this, because of the very deep V. This may not want to match together. So when I'm transferring to my fabric, I'll find a way to blend it together here by simply measuring what I have here. So here I have around 2.5 inches, and here I'm measuring it from my, I'm using this line as a guide. I'm measuring from my armhole line up here to check what I have. I have 2.5 inches here, and I have around 2 inches here, so it's shortage by ½ inch here. So I'll either add ½ inch here and blend, or reduce by ½ inch here and blend, so that by the time I sew it together, I'll have something this equal. Okay, so now I'm going to transfer all this to my fabric. Now I'll bring it back to show us. Okay, so this is it on my fabric. I've replicated this also on my lining. So this is a very soft lining, so I just iron paper stay on it just to make it stronger. So I've cut all these, and if you see the bust area, you can see that we have a smooth curve here. So that's the benefit of going down and up by ½ inch from your bust point, so that you'll not just be having any pointy edgy around your bust area. So this is for the side front, this is for the center back with the lining, this is the yoke. So like I said, I'm using organza for my yoke, and I've added the ½ inch allowance where my arrows are pointing. You can see that there are allowances here also. So I added allowance to all of them where necessary, and this is my center front. So now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and start joining them together. And this is the yoke for the front. You can see the ½ inch allowance that I added for joining this also. So for this is my half length. I just cut a normal basic skirt for the lower part. It's a 3/4 dress. So this is the skirt part of the dress, and like I said, it's just a basic skirt. Okay, so if you don't know how to draft this, you can put it down in the comment section below so that we can look into it. But it's very, very simple to make. So now, and I've also do cut lining for this also, because this dress will be fully lined. I've got linings for this, and I also added paper stays to make them stronger. So I'm just going to be taking this to the sewing machine now so that we'll join them together. So quickly, let me just show us how we'll be joining this together. I'm going to join my that line, that's my bustier line, together. Okay, I'm looking for the front for this. Okay, so I'm going to be joining this, my front together on the bustier line like this before I join the yoke to it, and I'll be doing the same to the back, but I'll take us through the sewing process. Okay, so I've sewn my bustier together, as you can see, and I notched it. So it's just for me to iron it, but before that I want to join my yoke so that I can iron it together. You can see how beautiful our bustier is looking, and you can see everything just rhymes together. There is no pointy or sharp edges. So this is the back also, it has been joined. So now I'm just going to bring in my yoke. Okay, this is the back yoke. I'm working on the front yoke first. So I'll bring in my yoke, and then I'll sew it to my bodice like this. So this is what we are achieving. So now to sew it, I'm just going to take it like this. I'll sew it to this side first, and then when I'm done sewing this side, I'll also take it and sew to the other side. So I'll do that and bring it back to show us. I'll do the same for the back bodies also. Okay, so now I've sewn the yoke to it. You can see this place how flat it is lying. It is very important. So to sew a plunging neckline like this, so that you can have something this V, so you just need to notch your bustier at the midpoint, so that it can lie flat and it will be very easy for you to sew. So now that I have something this nice, I'm just going to go ahead and use my lining to cover it up. Okay, so again, before I start sewing at this midpoint, I'm going to notch it a bit so that I can relax well for me. Okay, so I've added lining to it. You can see that it is neatly turned now. So the next thing I'm just going to do now is to add my skirt to my half length. So this is the skirt part for the front bodies. I'm just going to sew it to the back bodies, and I'll do the same for the back. I already did the same thing for my back bodies, and I already added my zip. I just turned my organza with a bias so that it will be neatly finished. So I'll repeat this for the front also, before I then join it on the shoulder and then shape the sides. So they've been joined together now. They are all together. Like I said, the front has a front slit, so the back doesn't have any slit. So the next thing I'm just going to do now is to sew them together on the shoulder like this. I'll join them on the shoulder, and then I'm going to join them on the sides. Okay, so I've sewn it on the shoulder, and then I went ahead to shape it on the side using my measurement. So this is the back. Remember I said the zipper is not going to be reaching my organza, so I just used press button to hold the back together like this. Then I'll have this opening because that is what I want, and then I want to pipe the neckline with a bias so that it will be neatly finished. I also fixed a regular balloon sleeve on the sleeve using my organza. So that is a simple way to make a bustier dress with yoke. You can see how beautiful our yoke came out. So I'm going to put this on the mannequin now so that you can see what it looks